Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our fifth edition of The Power of Sourcing. And I'm very excited for this year's edition, the fifth year in a row that we're doing this. We got an incredible lineup of sourcing experts that are going to be sharing different experiences and stories about the beautiful craft of sourcing. My name is Adrian Kolf, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Matcher. And for the majority of these webinars, I will be your host. Now, from a practical point of view, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat, because we will collect your questions and I will run our presenter, our keynote speaker, through the questions. So don't worry, we will get to all of your questions, and keep typing them in the chat. Share in the chat where you're from, where you're dialing in from, because it's always nice to have a little bit of interaction going. Follow us on YouTube and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and also subscribe to our newsletter so you can keep updated on when the next webinar is, but also of any future events that we're organizing. Now, as Matcher, we are a global embedded RPO company, whereby our sourcers, coordinators, and recruiters work fully embedded into the client teams of companies like TikTok, Booking, Stripe, Deal, Grammarly, Miro, but also Heineken and Action and Eneco. So if you are ever looking for a new opportunity, please check out our LinkedIn page and our career page. We're actively hiring sourcers and recruiters in Europe, the US, and also sometimes in Africa, because we want to work with the top of the top and the best of the best. And I'm a little biased. I think we're a really cool and fun company to work for. If your company could use any flexible sourcing or recruitment support, also please let us know. We would love to get in touch with you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored and also very excited that for the fourth year in a row, and for the third year in a row as our first opening keynote speaker, we have Balazs. And there's a reason why he's our first keynote speaker, because every single year Balazs delivers an incredible keynote. His content is always up to date. And not only does he know a lot about sourcing, he's also an advisor to Matcher, especially around sourcing. So without further ado, give a little applause wherever you are based for our first keynote speaker of the Power of Sourcing 2025, Balazs.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure I'm hearing the clapping, to be honest. People, come on, like we need some noise, right? Thank you so much. It is really nice to be back to you, Adrian. Thank you.
Yeah. No, and when I was speaking to Andrew, our head of marketing, the first name on the board, Balazs, like it's a given. And the beauty is every single year I go home with a few takeaways from your keynote, right? Like that you really are able to shed so many different perspectives on different topics within the sourcing industry. But today, the end of sourcing.
But not right? Today, right? That was it. I just want message. Sourcing died.
Yeah. Is this going to be your last sourcing webinar series, Balazs? That is the big question that we have for you, right? So yeah, I can't wait to dive in, and we'll get back after your keynote with all the questions. Because without further ado, Balazs, I want to welcome you on stage and to hear more about why sourcing is going to be ending.
Okay, thank you so much, and hello everyone. Hi Steve, Aaron, and the others. Okay, let's start. For all of those who don't know me, I'm a sourcing trainer or a sourcing consultant advisor. So I used to have a corporate sourcing leadership career, right? That's how we say it. I was a researcher a long time ago, 20 years ago, and I was, growing up. And my last corporate position was a global sourcing leadership position. And then I opened my company. So we do training, we do also consultancy. We help companies build their sourcing teams, and no, I'm not modest. I'm just, suffering a horrible imposter syndrome. So Yeah, so that's what we do, in my company at Code, and I want to start this story today with a really, I think it's a rare, really honest story, with some information about Code and how we, lived through the last few years. Okay, so when I talk about the end of sourcing, it's not just a marketing title. I really believe that sourcing is going through a massive transformation, and I do believe that the way how we define sourcing will just be eliminated, will just disappear. Okay, so oh my God, hi Glenn. so I've been on the sourcing sphere for 20 years, and this is the biggest shift I'm witnessing in like over these 20 years. Now let me show you, let me start with some data from my own company. So here we go. What you see here, that's our revenue. Okay, well, you don't see the numbers, hopefully, but you see the bars, and the bars are really telling a story. What you see here, the red is the custom training, when we train various corporations, and the blue was our public sourcing masterclass training. And around the mid time of 23, we started to realize that something is not going, that something is declining. I'm like, this whole story is declining. That's something, sourcing training somehow is declining. The first thing that we realized is that the public training was going down. It was difficult to sell the classes. Okay, and the public training, the interesting specialty of the public training is that usually public training was bought by recruiters who could afford for themselves, to pay the cost of the training. The custom training was always coming, from corporations. A big corporation came in, they ordered a big training, we trained their team, and then, whatever happened. But the public was driven by the recruiter herself. And what we started to see was a significant decline in terms of the public training. That was the first sign. That was 2023, around the half year, when we started to see like something is happening. And then what we also started to see, in parallel with this one, is that the number of custom training, so that number was also dropping. Now, long story short, what you see on the chart is that the last 6 months in 2024, we basically had no training. Now, you can say that, well, look at that, wow, such a great keynote speaker. He's talking about, how he failed with sourcing training. I believe, this thing is not about, it's not a reflection of our capability as a trainers, but it's really something about the market. At least that's what we felt. We didn't believe that, our quality as trainers dropped so significantly that all of the big corporations, would have decided to not come to us anymore. Really, clearly, that was not one of our answers. We felt something. Exactly. We felt something. We just saw that the interest in this sourcing thing that we celebrate even with this webinar, that was just declining. Now, I have one more chart for you. So that's what you see. Again, I'm quite honest with you guys now. This is the number of new registrations. Thank you, Glenn. It's not easy to, to show the world how you fail big times. Thanks God, we do all sorts of other things as well. So, so it's important, guys, our company did not bankrupt, right? we have consultancy, but, but it was a significant loss. It was a stop on the training part. Now, what you see here is that this is the quarterly new registration on our Source Code Academy, so our learning academy, right? And again, you see the same trend. You see the trend that over the years, the number of people who were interested to register, it was significantly declining. So that's how we sort of like started to close 2024. We were like, okay, so sourcing training, it may not be of interest to people, but then we read this one from Irina Shamaeva. And Irina Shamaeva said goodbye not only to sourcing training, but the entire sourcing industry. Now, those who know Irina or Irina, that Irina was running sourcing training, but she was also doing operational sourcing. And with this post, she said goodbye to everything. And And this sign was just so close to our experiment in terms of the lack of interest in sourcing. We saw this communication, and I'm not saying that this is the same reason, whatever. We just felt that something is going on, something is happening right now. We have to start thinking about this whole sourcing story, because if we experience, with my company that people are losing interest in sourcing, and Irina is saying goodbye to the entire industry, I mean, that's already 2 significant sourcing trainers, official trainers, on the globe. Now, when Irina said goodbye, right? that was more than just one person, leaving the industry. That was technically, like something really emotional for many of us, because Irina was a key figure in this whole, the way how we defined and the way how we talked about sourcing. Now, the way how we talked about sourcing, so this sourcing that we celebrate today, that sourcing was all about hacks, was all about tricks, was all about secrets. We found a way to crack every system, to crack LinkedIn, to find even those operators on LinkedIn that LinkedIn engineers were not aware of, right? We found a way to crack Facebook, to find people everywhere. And we started to share our knowledge with each other, right? Yes, Oscar, that's you. I'm glad you are here. And we gathered at conferences. We went to SourceCon. We went to the Sourcing Summit. We went to the True events. We went to all sorts of like really tactical sourcing things. And we formed a real, true global community of all sorts of sourcing experts. And this was somehow, we felt, I think, we probably all agree that we said goodbye with Irina saying goodbye to us. We just felt that we said goodbye to this. And to be honest, if I thought about my business, and I thought about the decline in terms of the interest of sourcing, and then I thought about Irina, and I thought about all of these things, I just started to feel even worse. And then after this, we read this. We read when Jim Stratt said, SourceCon is gone. Now, that was too much, to be honest, for a December. That was the moment when we were 100% sure that the sourcing is gone. It won't anymore be the same. Because not only we saw the decline, but we also saw someone extremely figurehead saying goodbye to us, and we saw that the number one community being eliminated and being merged into greater conference story. Now, SourceCon, for those of you who are not aware of the brand or this thing, SourceCon was built, was funded in 2007. Okay, so just a few years after the foundation of LinkedIn and Facebook. So that was a really beginning of the so-called, like internet or online sourcing, whatever we call it. So that was 2007, and it lasted till 2024. Okay, 14 years. Sourcing Summit that was funded in 2013, it's still on. Well, I just feel that something is really, really changing and happening. Now, this is a screenshot from Irina in 2019. And this is so dear for me, I can tell you, because not only because this time, Shane McCusker was really active with us, and he developed a tool that millions of recruiters were using, to hack Facebook graph search. But also because that was the spirit of sourcing that time. We realized that we can find candidates everywhere, and we basically cracked every system. That was amazing. Right, we were not limited to the LinkedIn talent pool, but we were able to go after all sorts of profiles, all around the web, and we had a really intense, like direct communication among all of us. Now, today, when we train recruiters, this is the reality, people. This is what we usually get as a brief from the talent acquisition leaders. They say, "Oh, what do we want? We want to find candidates beyond LinkedIn because every monkey can use LinkedIn. We want to go further." And then when we ask them, "Okay, so what do you want to use?" They will tell they tell us LinkedIn Recruiter. That's the reality, right? This is today. So when you think about all of it, right? And Glenn, I wanted to use a screenshot from you when you talk about AI, because AI is the last drop in this whole glass. Because when you think about that, there's a financial crisis, there's an economical decline. There is exactly, there is a key figurehead is retiring, from us. When the number one conference just eliminating, when people don't really do anything else, just using LinkedIn Recruiter, and then when you got AI with all of these huge promises, there was a moment when we just started to feel like this, and hopefully this meme resonates with some of you. There's a moment when you really read these signs, you have to think about that. What the fuck is going on? What will happen in a year? Okay, and this today's session. Okay, so I'm trying to give you one reading. Okay, I'm trying to show you some reasons, the way how we see it. I might be wrong. I'm happy to go for any argument. It should be an intelligent discussion. Okay, so I'm not here to tell you the thing. I'm just here to raise some points, to ask the right questions and to collectively with you to think about some answers. So what do we do now? I have a mantra, and I always say that recruitment is the laziest. It's the laziest profession, really, because don't because we only change when the world is changing, right? Recruiters are the laziest people. If we still could use a newspaper to post a job and to attract people via a newspaper, we would use that. But too bad the world has changed, so we have to change with this one. Recruiters traditionally are really bad with change management. At least that's my direct experience after training thousands of people. Okay, but when the world is changing, then people are changing. And when people are changing, then we have to change. And that's the logic. That's usually the line, that's usually the step-by-step process, if you think about this one. So let's see, let's go through, some of these things that we believe made a massive impact on sourcing. Okay, I see 7 trends that we have to really think about today. And I believe these 7 trends will tell us, what's next. Now, Glenn, Mr. Levy, I'm trying to pay attention to your chat. But I realize that you guys are having a good time, so if I'm just reading, I'm just trying to read, whatever you say that. Now, the number one trend is, as we all know, there's a shit world economics, right? Now, bad economy is bad for sourcing. And this is something after 20 years, Steve Levy after 40 years, right? In sourcing, this is something that you know by heart, right? You can say that if the economy will go down, then sourcing will be less important. Why? Because when the economics are down, then the demand is smaller, right? So fewer companies want to hire people and so on and so on. And because there is no such a huge competition, right? People usually, so there's no demand towards the key professionals. Also, usually when the economies go down, some segments of the economy unfortunately start making people redundant, right? So there's a growing size of active job seekers. So when the economies are down, active job seekers go up, and they usually apply to positions, and that's how usually companies during these times make most of their hires. Maybe it's not 40, maybe it's 50 still, right? Now, when the economies go up, that's usually the time when sourcing is needed, because competition grows, demand grows, talent supply usually shrinks. So then we have to go after proactively the key professionals and try to bring them into the hiring process. Fine. Now, just to show you some data, okay, regarding the last 2 years, I brought you 2 big agencies and their annual reports, just what is important for now. So the first one is Korn Ferry, right? Probably you all know Korn Ferry. If you compare their financial reports in 24 and 23, you will see how bad the market is. What you see here is there are two really important things. One is the cost of services significantly grew, right? There's a 26% growth in the cost of the recruitment services. Cost of services is basically all of the cost that is needed, that a company has to pay after their operations. And what you see at the bottom line, the last row, is that although they had much higher cost of services, their income, well, they're certainly linked together, right? Their net income shrinkened by 19% comparing to last year. So that's one thing. Then when you go after, when you move on, when you go check any other company, for instance, this is Hayes, you also see that their profit comparing to last year declined by 8%. So when you check these global agencies, you really see, you can really understand the size of the pain, on the markets. What we see is that the current trend is this: the hiring volumes decline. The difficulty of the jobs, that grow, and those jobs usually go to agencies, right? So it's difficult to fill those positions. The number of active job seekers grow, right? So while there are difficult positions, but also at the same time, there are more active job seekers. So these two trends work somehow against each other. The desire to change a job for most employees, that's decline, and the cost of services grow. So this is the first trend which really goes against sourcing. Now for agencies, for them, because they are getting more and more difficult positions, for them sourcing can be more and more important. But for major corporations that can work with active job seekers, usually they can fill the positions like that. So that's number one. Number two is that there's a really interesting shift in terms of the job-seeking behavior. I love to think about this one. I love to call it that there's a reconsolidation of the job-seeking platforms. Hopefully that's how we can call it. What do I mean by this? So over the last 20 years, we went through a really interesting evolution. The first one was that around 2000-ish, the beginning of the 21st century, that was primarily a job board market, and even that time we used print newspapers whatsoever to post jobs. And that time, people usually had a great understanding how they can find a job, how they can find an opening, and they can apply via those links or via those email addresses or postal addresses. And then the whole social media boom started to grow, right? We had LinkedIn and then Facebook and then Twitter and then, all the others. And that was all, around 2006, growing up to 2018, that was TikTok. And the interesting point during this whole social media boom is that that's the time when we started to use a multi-channel approach. Companies started to talk to potential candidates and employees via various websites and channels: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. So we created a really big noise, and people started to lose the confidence, where they can apply to a job. Because LinkedIn jobs, yes, that was there, but that was just one option. Monsters and the Indeeds and whatever, yes, there were job boards, but that was, Facebook was experiencing with Facebook jobs, right? And also we posted jobs via Twitter and Twitter. So there was a big noise. It was really interesting that after COVID, we see a reconsolidation. We see that LinkedIn, with the end of 2023, LinkedIn hit 1 billion users. Okay, so that's basically every 8th member of the planet. So LinkedIn has gained the momentum, and LinkedIn has been able to make people realize that if they want to look for a job, now it's common sense that they have to go to LinkedIn. Also, some job boards, have won within, by this time, like Indeed, for instance, in certain countries. So what we see now is that, really similarly to the beginning of the 2000s, now, today, people know where they have to look for a job if they want to look for a job. And that was not the case, before the current moment. So why sourcing was really important? Because there was a noise. And there was an uncertainty of channels, because people were trying to, people were experimenting all of these things. They built profiles on Facebook everywhere, right? So that was that. But today it is all consolidated. What we also see is that there's a new way how we look for a job. I love these things, to be honest. I love it. This gentleman, who put this on LinkedIn that he's looking for a job, his text was this: "Hey guys, I was on parental leave and I decided to go back to the workspace. So if you want, if you know of you, know about whatever." But it's a big shift, right? It's a big change, because prior to that, we either applied to a job board, right? But that was a closed system, right? So it wasn't public. Not everyone was able to see such a thing. Today, it's not anymore a question. If you want to find a job, you just go to LinkedIn and you put it there. You can use a ribbon, and that's it. And the recruiters can find you. And that's like a really, really, really new mindset. Now, again, put together that people know that they have to go to LinkedIn. They learn that they have to use these elements, so that if they want to go for a job, they can use that ribbon. They can click on the box that they are looking for new opportunities. So it's basically just a new approach to job seeking. But we also see, I think hopefully it's just a joke category. I saw it 3 days ago, I guess, that AI certainly is trying to help job seekers. So maybe in the future, we will see more and more people using an AI platform to apply to jobs, to create their AI-driven CVs and to automatically apply to jobs. So that can also happen. But what I would like to say with this second point is that there is this shift. And the shift is that in the last 15 years, people were unsure how they can find a job. I was talking to a lot of my friends, and often they came to me saying, "Can you help me? How can I find?" Because they knew that there were job boards, but they also heard that job boards were not anymore really interesting. So that's changed, and now we have this new momentum. Third one, cybersecurity sucks. My boyfriend, 27, and I'm not bragging. It's great, and it's also a nice challenge for an old man like me. But what I see on him is that this generation, they don't like to be publicly out to the whole world. We, like my generation, right? So people in the age of me, Glenn, Aaron, Steve, we learned how to build a digital profile. We learned how to boost our personal brand. We learned how to put content out there and how to talk to strangers whatsoever. Now, youngsters, they just don't like it. They are not looking for it. There is a new shift in terms of how people nowadays think about data and data privacy. It's so funny if you think about GDPR, right? GDPR came to play 2014 probably. And that time, I remember we were laughing at GDPR, right? It was like every time when we go for a conference, the first person who mentions GDPR, they have to buy a drink for all of us, because we hated GDPR. We thought GDPR was a joke. But by today, we know that cybersecurity really matters. The moment when you get a text, right, an SMS, you don't know if it's real or not, because there's a link, but that link might be real, might be just a scam link. And there's a growing concern. There are growing concerns about cybersecurity. So what does it mean? The people started to close their profiles. As long as we were able in the past to find data on all of the other platforms, nowadays we find less and less and less and less. When you go to TikTok, you see no any professional data. Even more so, you see no any data. You see just the video content, and that's it, a nickname. Okay, now let's move on, because there's also this. So there's a change in the way how we use social networks nowadays. And over the last 20 years, we started using social at the beginning. We started to use social networks, guess what? Via networks, via connecting with people, right? I remember the time when I first sent the first email to Glenn, and that was a long time ago, because I discovered some, sourcing trick, and I really wanted to tell him first. And I remember the time when we connected on LinkedIn and we connected on, whatever, Facebook. I was big times. Now today this is gone, right? Because people don't really care about anymore the connections. what we see is that people go after content. They just want to be entertained by content, and they don't really care if that content is coming from me or Glenn or whoever, or from total strangers from Taiwan, right? So, so that's just a big shift. We don't anymore, collect friends. We don't want to connect with people. I'm not even connected to most of you on LinkedIn, right? Because we just stopped doing that because we don't give a fuck, honestly. Who cares if we are connected on LinkedIn or not? I mean, we know that we can be connected that quickly, easily, so we don't have to. So we started to follow content. But there is the whole point, people. Sourcing is a bloody boring content. Sourcing is not good content. I see some of the sourcing trainers. I love it. They share personal content. They're sourcing trainers, but they don't talk about sourcing. They talk about their hobbies. And because they are so cute, people certainly love it. At the beginning, I was like, come on, this is not even the sourcing content. And I realized, yeah, because the words changed. Because people just want to get content and they want to move on. They don't care about the actual professional content. We also see is that search. People hate searches. Like, let's be frank. I mean, people, I've trained at least 4,000 or 5,000 recruiters over the last 5 years. And I can tell you that most of my recruiters, they didn't really like searching. Now, what you see is that recruiters like engagement. When you go to a sourcing conference, well, as long as there are still sourcing conferences, people love to talk about engagement, because that's sexy, because that's a little bit like content type. But the search part is not more interesting. OSINT, like stalking, going after someone's Facebook password, forget whatever, heck, no, out of consideration. We also see it's also important that there are no new tricks. We live in a world, but there are no anymore sourcing hacks. I can't tell you when was the last time when I heard about any cool Chrome extension or any cool sourcing trick or anything, right? It's just gone. If you think about the conferences, and if we are really honest, conferences are declining. I don't know if you followed the conferences, on LinkedIn or so. If you did so, you saw, I love that. You saw that there is fewer and fewer people in the rooms. And I don't love it, don't get me wrong. What I love is that sometimes you see a conference happening. I know about the conference that happened last year or the year before, and there were something like 30 people in the audience, 30. But based on LinkedIn, the impression was that it was full of people because the speakers certainly only posted like selfies, and you thought it was like a big boom. But we have to see it realistically that this is again, going away. And I call it sourcing got talent. So if you go to any conference, you will realize that we actually really appreciate when we don't have to talk about sourcing. On SourceCon, there's a guy, I think he's a sorcerer. He do like a beatbox type of things, if I'm not mistaken. And we love that. We love that Mark Tortorici plays the piano. Excellent, really cool. When Mark Tortorici talks about sourcing, well, that's also really exciting. But Mark is, thank you, Phil. But Mark is so intelligent and so knowledgeable about sourcing, and his technical details are so in depth that it's hard to follow Mark Tortorici sometimes because he's really, really technical. But when Mark Tortorici plays the piano, wow, amazing. But hey, people, that's not anymore sourcing content. Let me show you this. Now, social talent. If you go to Social Talent's homepage, there is no anymore a word about sourcing. It's really shocking. And it's not shocking because, it's shocking people because they started as a sourcing training company, right? That's how they started. We remember, well, maybe some of you remember, Johnny Campbell running the weekly Wednesday webinars. That was the beginning of Social Talent. And that was a sourcing training company. Now you go to the homepage, you do not find the word sourcing on the page. Those speakers that they have highlighted on the homepage, none of them is talking about sourcing. So sourcing as a content is just dried out. Now moving on, corporate sourcing. I love it. What you see is that by now, so we castrated sourcing, and by now companies love sourcing. That's true. We love nothing exciting in sourcing, so sourcing can become corporate finally. If you think about, like, if you just look around, like certain companies like the Metas, the Amazons, the the IBMs, the Googles, and so on and so on, they hire and they employ hundreds of sourcers, right? So there's a new corporate sourcing nowadays. But that corporate sourcing, and you have to know that one, that corporate sourcing is super, super safe. That's a sourcing which is basically all about LinkedIn sourcing. If they do something more pro, then they will have a great CRM, like an Avature or Phenom people, and they will run some talent pool searches within that system. If they have even more pro, they may have access to some of the job board databases, but that's it. Usually, that's the story. It's a safe sourcing, of course, certainly, because every leader within the talent acquisition, ball game wants to be on the safe side, right? No one needs a GDPR, legal case. No one wants to have any data privacy. If you talk to agencies, I do that a lot. You understand that there's an increasing amount of people complaining about data privacy. I remember my time at Randstad when we started to work around GDPR, and that time, I think it was like once a quarter we had someone asking us to delete their profile. Nowadays, this is like almost every week you get a candidate saying like, "Can you delete my application? I don't want any more you to own my data." This is it. Also, you see is that recruiters usually don't have time to sourcing, right? Typical, they don't have interest, so they don't like to search. When you talk to recruiters and when you understand your real life, and you you think about that they always have to review so many hundreds of profiles, there's this search fatigue, that there's this bad feeling with searching. So so on the corporate side, it's great to see a large volume of sourcers. But basically, the level of sourcing that they do is sort of like limited to to a really basic LinkedIn search. All right. So let me just check in the comments from John and okay. So the LinkedIn sourcing. What is really interesting? Again, that's our experience. You talk to a company, they want to improve their team sourcing capability. Excellent. That's why they came to you. But then they say, no, we don't want you to train on LinkedIn. We had a training from LinkedIn itself. That was great. But the training that LinkedIn is providing, right? So you know those slides. You know that LinkedIn is pushing their drop downs, for instance, right? Just to pick that one. LinkedIn is not really talking about Boolean, right? Like those searches. LinkedIn is not really, when LinkedIn trains you, they don't really go through all of the filters, because sometimes even the trainer doesn't understand the depth of the filters. So usually when companies say, "Oh yeah, we want a training," they say, but we don't want you to train it on the basics. LinkedIn is fine. What else can you train us? That's the thing. Now, moving on, trend number 6 is that we see there's this trend. There's a trend that many companies still push their sourcing. No, let me step one step back. Because recruiters usually don't like to source, okay? But companies need sourcing, okay? No one wants to be a sourcer, but companies still need sourcing, right? Sometimes. That we need a shift that companies push sourcing usually to east. When you go to LinkedIn Talent Insights, or you go, this is from People GPT. I just wanted to try their talent. It's Talent Insights. Basically, I think it's LinkedIn data, but anyway, what you see is that in terms of the population, the sourcing population, right, on the planet, we see that there are some major spots in the US and some in Western Europe mainly, and then we see India and the Philippines, but we see basically no presence in Latam and in Africa. So what you see is that there are major sourcing operations on the developed countries, right, North America, Europe, but those people actually don't want to have any more in-depth sourcing training and sourcing knowledge, right? They do whatever they know they do, and that's it. There's a growing population of sourcers in Asia, but usually companies don't allocate enough budget to Asia. That's because they brought sourcing to lower cost environments, right? And that creates like a story that basically no one is improving in sourcing anymore, because Asia is not improving because they don't have money. North America and Europe is not improving because they think they know everything. And by the way, in Latin Africa, there's so little presence. Right. Okay, Binsi, that's a good point. There might be, like I was searching for, like sourcers, right? So I was trying to build that one. Now, and the last one certainly is AI. Now, what I did prior to this webinar is that I was running a big campaign. I was connecting with a lot of recruiters globally, hundreds of them. And I asked, when they accepted the invite, I asked them, what is their new aha moment in sourcing? Because I was really curious what they say. And I was asking whether it's AI, automation, whatsoever. And almost everyone was coming back to me privately on LinkedIn saying that we don't understand this AI hype because we use ChatGPT, right? We use it for search for information. We use it to analyze data, to write something, but that's it. We don't really, like, everyone is talking about AI, and we feel bad because we just don't have AI, during our work. But I can tell you, almost everyone was saying the same. There were some people that was also interesting. Some recruiters came back to me saying like, "Oh yeah, AI makes my life much more easier." And then when we started to talk, basically that was some more basic automation tasks, right? And some usage of the ChatGPTs. There's a big promise though, certainly with AI, right? There's a big promise that AI might be able to join the recruiting game, might be able to search and whatsoever, right? But to be honest, from at least a European standpoint, there are so many still open questions, right? There are questions about localization. There's a huge question about integration. There's a huge question about data privacy and GDPR. And those questions are really real, because those questions are blocking companies to buy into these solutions. And there's also this. So most of these AI systems require a database. And I know, we have the ATSs whatsoever, and there are all sorts of ways to find people, even in the worst ATS, right? So even in Workday, you can use a search engine to find people at Workday. And what AI is doing is that as long as there is a database, right, then the promises that they can build like search algorithm in a way that they would go through a range of questions and a range of criteria. They would come back to you with all sorts of assessment. You can modify these criteria. You can add new ones. You can remove whatever, right? They can do this search themselves. They can come back to you with a sort of assessment, showing you the sortings, showing which candidate is the highest ranking whatsoever. And then you can even automate that if someone is ranked higher than 80%, they would immediately get a message from the system, right? The first message. If the candidate is not replying, they would send you a follow-up. So you can automate, the whole process. That's the promise. But to be honest, we are yet quite far from it. And if I'm realistic, like this probably will take at least 2, 3, maybe even 5 more years. If I think about that, how few companies I know that have been able to implement the CRM, right, the candidate relationship management system, on top of their ATS, it's just minimal. We talk about these things at conferences. We certainly celebrate all of these things because these are exciting stuff. But the reality, with companies, is just much like they are just running behind. So in terms of how to connect the dots, okay, and that's basically my last thing. I tried to Right. So hello, Jason. So AI sourcing tools, are getting faster and better at finding publicly available information. Right. Okay, that's true. That's a promise, right? That's what they say. Now, I joined People GPT, like I bought my license and I was testing it. And what I saw is that what I saw was that basically they were massively using LinkedIn data, right? So I didn't really see a too big difference between a People GPT and a Hire Easy, if I'm honest with you guys. I also realized that with People GPT that they don't really have they have to update the profiles, right? Because I was comparing, like someone's People GPT profile with LinkedIn profile. I realized that it's not the same thing, right? So I understood that they claim that they update the database, let's say every third, fourth week, but I'm not sure if that's the case with every profile within their database. So I'm happy to show you, Jason, because I took so many screenshots about People GPT that time. But again, I think the promise is huge, but the actual where we are is not so developed yet. Okay, connecting the dots, okay, because I don't want to run out of time. So there's a financial downturn, right? There's a financial crisis, inflation, whatsoever. There's also a reconciliation of the job-seeking platforms. People know that if they want to look for a job, they go to LinkedIn, they go to a few job boards, Indeed, and the others, and they apply. And because there's a financial crisis, there's a high number of active job seekers. Because there's a high number of active job seekers, there's no interest in sourcing actually for most of that, for the majority of recruiting nowadays. The high number of job seekers actually create other problems, right? Because we have to handle the applications. Usually what you see is that companies either create all sorts of global shared service centers or sourcing centers just to manage the application flow, or you see that some companies try and start to use some AI or automated services or CRMs just to somehow automate the CV screening process. Okay, so that's the first step that you see. What you also see is that there's a growing cybersecurity risk, which means that people demand privacy. People do not want us to bother them via Facebook. They just don't want. And it's me saying that because I trained recruiters years ago to say, yes, you can find people on Facebook, and yes, you can try to connect with them. Today, I'm saying, don't try, because we see a trend that probably more people potentially will be upset about that as before. I also see that because of this change in the data privacy, sourcing went safe. If you work on the corporate side, probably you have to comply. Most corporations even try to limit the way how you use the email templates, right? Because they need certainly safety and compliance. Now, moving on, you see that there's a change in how we use social networks. We don't anymore connect with people. We just follow content. And when it comes to recruitment, our content is engagement. Sourcing isn't the right content. Like a Boolean string usually is not the right content. A new hack is like, man, like this. What we see is that sourcing is not anymore sexy, people. Search is not sexy. Search is boring. Search is way too complicated. Search is based on Boolean, but Boolean is sort of like a mathematical, logical thing. And many recruiters are not happy with mathematical things. And it's difficult to change this mindset. And what I want to show you with this one is that this is, I believe, the current state. The current state that there is no interest in sourcing. If there's interest, we shift it to a lower cost region. Sourcing goes safe. No any sexy stalking whatsoever. Sourcing search itself is not sexy. We don't really like to search. We don't really have time. To be honest, I think we say that we are too busy to search because we don't like to search, right? Because if we don't want to do something, we just claim that we don't have enough time to do that. And what we see is that to solve it, because still companies need some sort of sourcing, we try to solve it with AI. And to be honest, the reason why we are so excited about AI on the leadership level, because we know recruiters hate sourcing. And AI seems to be the solution to fix it. Right, that's a great question, Phil. I see, it's really interesting that I see the question is that, how about training a more affordable workforce from developing countries to become sourcers in order to battle search fatigue and maintain financial. Yeah, that's a really good point. And what we see is that, the Asian part is quite developed already. There are Africa is a huge opportunity, to be honest. And I see a growing interest and need in Africa. I just don't know, to be honest, whether Africa can change this game today, or basically whether we will change the way Africa thinks about sourcing. Because if you see that the rest of the world is so, if think about sourcing, the safe, boring, blah, too corporate function, I'm not sure we can change this mentality anymore. If you think about it, that's my last slide. If you think about future, hopefully in the future, we won't have a financial crisis, okay? So that thing, will go away. If that goes away, if that goes away, then the really high number of active job seekers, will be more moderate, right? So that we won't have that many active job seekers, technically. So, but everything else, most potentially will stay. The recognition job seeking platforms will stay. People will know if they want to apply, look for a job, they know where to go. The cybersecurity will not go away, but the people need for data privacy will not go away. The content driven potential will not go away. It probably will change, will evolve social media, right? I cannot tell you, I don't even have a guess where. Okay, so these things, will either evolve, it will just stay with us. So what I believe will happen is that we will go back. I love it. I love Africa, and I have to say that Vanessa Rath has made an incredible work to bring Africa to where Africa is today in terms of sourcing. So if I continue this whole thinking, what I believe is that as much as we try to move sourcing to global centers, like with that chunk of sourcing, probably the 80% of sourcing or 90% of sourcing, we will try to move it to AI. That's my thinking. As long as we find a way to answer those customer needs in Europe and other countries, for integration, localization, GDPR, whatsoever. If that's possible, we just want technology to do that one. Because to be honest, I was talking to a leader recently, and that leader told me this, and I want you to have this as a final challenge. The leader told me this: my recruiters hate sourcing. They go to LinkedIn, they search, and they send emails to the first 200 people. If I had AI doing the same thing, but for a much better cost, why wouldn't I use AI? And now you guys may think, because you joined a sourcing webinar, so you probably really love sourcing. You may say that, oh, come on, fire those recruiters, whatever. But I can tell you that's the majority of recruiters. That's how they think about this whole story. So if that's the story, then companies will need to use technology to fix it. And I believe that time a new type of sourcer will come up. Because there will always be that, tiny 5%, 10% of the roles, where you will need that exact, like the specialty knowledge, specialty network, like all of those things. And I think that will be that will stay with sourcing. So that's all I wanted to say, people. I guess I have no more slides. I'm really curious about your thoughts, and if you have questions, feel free. We have 5 minutes, and then I go to my opera. So yeah, I hope I'm not gonna jump.
Balazs, wow. I've secretly been, well, not secretly. I've been taking screenshots of some of the slides that you shared.
You will get the slides, you know, Adrian. Come on.
I know, but still, like in real life, I think if I speak for myself, there were definitely some uncomfortable shares and learnings, but I think very true. And I want to applaud you for starting with your personal view and like what you've seen in your business in terms of, you know, how the market has changed. And I can share from our embedded RPO perspective, right? It was not only on the sourcing side, but also on the recruitment side, where we saw a huge dip. You know, those years when you saw the big dip,
Yep.
have also been really challenging for us, not only on the sourcing, but also on the recruitment side, just the whole market. Yeah, I think both you and I were in a cyclical business for that matter. But we are also really looking into what do we need to do with AI? Like, how is the market changing? You know, like what does recruitment look like in 6, 12, 24 months from now? Sourcing and recruitment, right? But before I take up all the time, let's see if anyone has any questions in the chat. Please put some questions in the chat. We have 4 minutes left with Balazs before he needs to go to his opera. Does anyone have any specific questions for Balazs? Please share them in the chat.
My question to answer some of these.
Let me start with the question, right? So I understood the final conclusion, but what do you think, you know, given everything that you shared, you know, sourcers should be doing now in order to stay relevant?
Well, what I would say is that so the recruiters need to. What I would say this is that recruiters need to learn about AI and, you know, get familiar with AI and what, you know, like and all of these things. You know, like just to give you one tactical thing, right? I was using Balazs, right, just to connect with people, right? Balazs is a French LinkedIn automation tool, really nice, you know, super cool, quite affordable. And what I understood is that, you know, it's funny, right? Because we believe that as long as we can add LinkedIn profiles to Balazs, right, with a click, right, and then it just, you know, goes through. Even more so when I can upload a list of LinkedIn URLs, so Balazs can do all of that, you know, identification whatsoever automatically. There's a whole point with automation is that I just realized that I wanted to skip the cleaning of the data before I hit the button. In other words, that I realized that although we will use automation, there is, for instance, a human task, which is like you have to go through the list. You have to check the first name. You have to remove the emojis from the first name. You have to make sure that, you know, if someone is Adrian, in bracket Audrey, you clean up. You have to make, you know, that's a human task that you have to do at the moment. And if you do that one, then you hit the button and then Balazs will do the rest. But if you don't do that, you just, you know, go, you know, like full scope automation. Basically, you will do a really shit campaign. And that's, you know, so the reason why I'm using this one is because we have to understand, we have to learn how AI works and how automation works and what type of task, you know, we have with AI. Like what, because we have to do different tasks. We will have just different responsibilities, you know, with this one. For instance, you know, to go through the list, check the first name, and then, you know, and then put the button, right? So you have to understand, you know, how these things work. So the opera, Aaron, is I go to Janacek opera. It's a Czech opera, and it's called Janufa. I'm really curious. Okay, there's Jason. So do you still see value in having a separate sourcing team from recruitment team? Yeah, so we see that one, right? That's what I call the corporate sourcing, right? That is a corporate sourcing. If we have a high workload of requisitions, right, it may make sense to separate sourcing from recruitment and then to, you know, to have separate recruitment teams, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, maybe it's just equally good or even a little bit better to have, you know, this separation, segmentation in the story, right? But I think, you know, it's important that potential expectation to the sourcing team, you know, to all of them to be a super spy and a super stalker and, you know, whatever, to really unearth every potential candidate. I think, if I'm really honest, that's a really difficult promise. And I'm not sure that even if our starting team is all, all stalkers or Aaron links, I'm not sure how long we can sustain such a sourcing team, to be honest. And what I see is that every sourcing team nowadays basically decline to a linear recruiter sourcing team, which is not bad, don't get me wrong, but this is it. This is what we have, I think. Okay, what is the one platform you would recommend that sourcers create content? Stick to LinkedIn. Right. Yeah. Okay, Vinci. So that's a good point. That basically the answer is that the platform is the platform of your audience. That's it. If they use ResearchGate, that sucks. Then create academical papers and use ResearchGate. If they use TikTok, well, bad luck. You have to create funny videos. That's how it goes. Okay. Have you tried Boolean search inside PeopleGPT? Yeah. I tried. Roberto, so I tried PeopleGPT recently, and what I suggest you to do is that go for a really simple search. I was trying a backend Java developer. Go for a backend Java. Put some keywords. It's Java backend. Spring Boot. Whatever, like Python maybe, and select a small location. Like an Eastern European location, just to limit the number of results, just to make sure that you can really easily compare. And do the same search on LinkedIn. And you will see, I promise, that on LinkedIn, you will have more people. And, and that's the answer at the moment. If I go to PeopleGPT and with a search string, I get only 140 people. And, on LinkedIn, I get 2,000 people. What's the whole point, to use PeopleGPT? Is it because it's AI? Come on. For me, that's not yet a selling point. But this is just for now, right? And they will certainly evolve. Yeah, AI only searches the surface. Yes, if you think about, for instance, LinkedIn AI, right? LinkedIn AI today is using LinkedIn, the drop downs, so. Anyway, the Boolean is still good. The challenge is that Boolean is really difficult to teach. I mean, it's easy to teach and or not, but it's difficult to change the mindset, of people to really apply Boolean as productively as possible. All right. I think that's it, right? I feel like there's no one else.
I think that's it. Balazs, we can do hours with you. We can do hours with you. Balazs, this was super insightful. Thank you so much. For people to connect with you, we can connect with you on LinkedIn. If you have any other questions, of course. I want to thank everyone for dialing in so massively. We had a record number of live attendees in this webinar, which is amazing. And this is only the first, ladies and gentlemen, because next week we're going to have Linus Diestelkamp that comes. He's a first-time keynote speaker. He spoke at Sourcing Summit, I think, in Amsterdam, and he's going to be talking about how to build sourcing teams. So even though we might be talking about the end of sourcing, Linus is going to be talking about how to
the new beginning, right? Okay,
exactly,
cool.
the new beginning. Balazs, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope to see you next week again on Thursday, same time, same location with Linus Diestelkamp. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.